the near future, we can expect an apple pie. I consider that very close to a proposal.
Before it became a beloved TV series, The Courtship of Eddie's Father had a secret life full of censorship battles, a family sneak operation, a director who openly despised the project, and a theme song originally written about a girlfriend, not a son. One of its child stars grew up to front a punk band, while another's real-life dad quietly hid on set. Here are 15 weird facts you didn't know about The Courtship of Eddie's Father. Fact 1. MGM bought the book before it was published.
Eddie, how old was this big bully?
2 months younger than me.
Most movie studios wait until a book is out in the world, reviewed, and proven to be a hit before they spend money on the rights. MGM did not wait. Back in 1961, the studio paid $100,000 to acquire the film rights to Mark Tobey's novel about a widowed father and his young son. And they did this before the book had even been published. That was a significant sum at the time, roughly equivalent to over $1 million today. And it was a genuinely unusual move for a major Hollywood studio to make. The novel, also called The Courtship of Eddie's Father, told the story of Tom Corbett, a magazine editor raising his young son Eddie on his own in New York City after the death of his wife. Eddie, being a kid with very direct opinions, takes it upon himself to help his father find a new partner. And the story follows the sometimes awkward, sometimes funny situations that result from a child trying to play matchmaker for a grieving adult. What made MGM's early investment interesting is that they were essentially betting on a story that had no proven audience yet. There were no bestseller lists to point to, no reviews praising the book, and no public buzz to justify the price tag. The studio simply believed in the material enough to move fast and lock it down early. That confidence turned out to be well placed. The book was well received after publication, and the film that followed in 1963 became a modest commercial success for MGM, eventually inspiring a long-running television series that premiered in 1969. The whole franchise began with one studio making a very large, very early bet on a story about a little boy and his dad. Fact 2, Minnelli thought it would be a very little picture.
No matter how I feel about Elizabeth, I'm very glad you've been in the hands of a round-eyed girl.
And when the director Vincente Minnelli was handed the assignment to direct The Courtship of Eddie's Father, he was not exactly thrilled about it. Minnelli was a filmmaker known for lush, ambitious productions. Movies like An American in Paris and Gigi had earned him an Academy Award and a reputation as one of Hollywood's most visually sophisticated directors. A small, quiet story about a widower and his young son was not the kind of project that excited him. According to film historian Emmanuel Levy, Minnelli told his wife before production even began that he feared the whole thing would turn out to be a very little picture. That was not a compliment. He saw it as a minor, inconsequential project, and from his perspective at the time, it probably felt like a step backward from the grand work he had built his career on. A part of what made the assignment feel like a consolation prize was the context surrounding it. Minnelli had come off a difficult stretch in the early 1960s with a couple of films that had not performed well either critically or commercially. Studios tend to give directors safer, smaller projects after a few stumbles, and The Courtship of Eddie's Father fit that pattern perfectly. It was a manageable, low-risk family picture rather than a sweeping epic. Despite his reservations, Minnelli brought real craft to the film. He used widescreen compositions thoughtfully, gave the story a warm visual style, and drew genuine performances from his cast, particularly from young Ronnie Howard as Eddie. The movie may have been smaller in scale than his earlier work, but it was made with care. The irony is that this little picture Minnelli was so unenthusiastic about went on to have a far longer cultural life than many of the more ambitious films he was proud of. Fact 3. The three women were all based on one real person.
Dad, I know how much you miss Mommy.
One of the more quietly unusual things about the courtship of Eddie's father is something most audiences watching the film would never suspect. The story follows widower Tom Corbett as he navigates his social life again, and along the way, he encounters three very different women, each representing a different type of romantic possibility. One is glamorous and exciting, one is warm and nurturing, and one is practical and sensible. They feel like three distinct people built to contrast with each other. But according to film historian Emmanuel Levy, they were not invented separately at all. All three women were actually drawn from the same real person, a woman named Dorothy Wilson. Wilson had worked closely with the original author, Mark Tobey, in putting the stories together, and she also held the copyrights to the material, which gave her a meaningful stake in how the work was presented. The three female characters in the story were each meant to capture a different side of her personality and her presence, essentially splitting one real woman into three fictional ones to serve the needs of the plot. It is a strange creative choice when you think about it. Rather than drawing from multiple sources of inspiration or simply inventing fictional characters from scratch, the writers essentially took one woman and divided her up, assigning different qualities to each character. The glamorous one got her charisma, the warm one got her gentleness, and so on. Dorothy Wilson's involvement in the project went beyond simply being a muse. She was a genuine collaborator in shaping the source material, which makes the decision to build the story's central romantic dilemma around her all the more personal. Most viewers have no idea that what looks like three separate love interests is really a portrait of one woman refracted across the entire film. Fact 4. A child's anatomy lesson. Triggered the censors, Hollywood.
I'm glad you know, Eddie. No, it's something that we know about each other, isn't it?
In the early 1960s was still operating under the production code, a set of rules that governed what could and could not appear in mainstream American films. Studios submitted their scripts and finished films to the code's administrators, who would review the content and either grant a seal of approval or demand changes. Without that seal, a film could not be distributed through the major theater chains, which made it essentially a commercial death sentence. Most people assume the films that ran into trouble with the code were crime pictures, adult dramas, or stories with sexual content. The Courtship of Eddie's Father was a gentle family comedy about a little boy and his father, and it still managed to trigger the censors. The problem, according to Emmanuel Levy, was a scene in which young Eddie makes some observations about women's bodies, specifically commenting on things like chest and waist size in the innocent, matter-of-fact way that a curious child might. Eddie was not being inappropriate by any reasonable standard. He was simply a kid noticing things and saying what he noticed. But the code's administrators saw it differently. They objected to the content and required that the scene be altered before they would grant their approval. The filmmakers made the necessary changes, keeping Eddie's observations vague enough to satisfy the censors while still preserving the humor and the character's voice. The scene that ended up in the finished film is softer and less specific than what was originally written. It is a telling reminder of just how strictly the code was applied during that era. Even a harmless, well-intentioned family picture featuring a small child could not get through without scrutiny, and even the most innocent dialogue could become a point of contention if it touched on the human body at all. Fact 5. Ron Howard's entire family snuck onto the set.
You seem that you're about to be borrowed.
Oh, thank you, sir.
When young Ronnie Howard was cast as Eddie in the 1963 film, he brought more than just his talent to the production. He also, in a manner of speaking, brought his whole family along. According to information documented on IMDb, 2 other members of the Howard family quietly appeared in the film in uncredited roles, turning the courtship of Eddie's father into something of a family affair. Ronnie's father, Rance Howard, who was himself a working actor, was cast as a camp counselor in the film. It was a small background role with no lines of particular significance, and his name did not appear in the credits, but he was there on screen alongside his son. For Rance, who spent decades as a character actor and supporting player in film and television, it was simply another job. But the fact that he was sharing the set with his young boy gave it a different kind of meaning. Well, even more unexpected was the appearance of Clint Howard, Ronnie's younger brother. Clint showed up in the film as a child at a party, wearing an Indian headdress in a blink-and-you-miss-it moment that was also uncredited. What makes this detail particularly notable is that it is documented as Clint Howard's film debut. He was only a toddler at the time, and he would go on to become a prolific character actor in his own right, appearing in dozens of films and television shows over the following decades, many of them directed by his older brother Ron. So while the film tells the story of a father and son navigating life together behind the camera, a real father was watching his own son's work, with the younger one appearing on screen for the very first time. Fact 6, producer interviewed hundreds of kids, then knew instantly.
Why don't you come right out and ask Dolly to live with us?
Here's an idea.
I bet she'd love to live with us.
Our finding the right child actor to carry a film is one of the most difficult casting challenges in Hollywood. A child actor has to be natural enough to feel believable, expressive enough to hold the camera's attention, and capable of keeping up with the adult performers around them, all without looking like they are performing. For The Courtship of Eddie's Father, the success of the entire film rested on finding the right kid to play Eddie. Because without a genuinely compelling child at the center, the whole story falls apart. Producer Joe Pasternak took the search seriously. According to Wikipedia, he interviewed hundreds of children before making his decision. That is not a casual audition process. That is a wide, thorough, time-consuming effort to find exactly the right fit. Pasternak was clearly not willing to settle, and he was prepared to keep looking until he was certain he had found his Eddie. Then Ronnie Howard walked in. Howard was 6 years old at the time and had already appeared on television, including some work on The Andy Griffith Show, but he was far from a major name. The moment Pasternak spoke with him, though, the search was over. Pasternak later said simply, quote, "I knew he was right," end quote. There was no deliberation, no callback, no comparing him against other finalists. The instinct was immediate and total. What Pasternak recognized was the same quality that audiences would respond to throughout Howard's childhood career, and later his directing career. A kind of natural warmth and intelligence that came through without effort. Ronnie Howard did not seem to be performing. He just seemed to be himself, and that was exactly what the role required. Fact 7, Shirley Jones took the role specifically to avoid singing.
Will she be my stepmother?
Come on now, use your head. I'd have to marry her for that.
Shirley Jones was, by the time The Courtship of Eddie's Father went into production in 1963, one of the most recognizable musical performers in Hollywood. She had starred in the film versions of Oklahoma and Elmer Gantry, the latter of which earned her the Academy Award for Best Supporting Actress in 1961. She was known for her voice, her warmth, and her ability to anchor big musical productions. So it might come as a surprise to learn that she chose to appear in The Courtship of Eddie's Father specifically because it did not require her to sing a single note. According to Wikipedia, Jones accepted her role in the film, in part because there was no singing involved. For someone who had built a large portion of her public image around musical performance, this was a deliberate choice to be seen differently, to prove that she could carry a role without relying on the quality most people associated with her. This was not an unusual instinct for actors of that era. Performers known for one particular skill often took non-musical dramatic or comedic roles to demonstrate their range and avoid being permanently typecast. Jones was well aware that audiences and casting directors alike might continue to see her primarily as a singer if she kept taking musical parts. And stepping into a straightforward romantic comedy was a way of expanding how people understood what she could do. She played Elizabeth Martin in the film, one of the 3 women competing for widower Tom Corbett's attention, and she brought real charm to the role without a single musical moment to lean on. The choice paid off, and her performance holds up as one of the film's warmer elements. Fact 8. Dick Van Dyke secretly appears on the wall.
Now, for me, it took many, many years as just a social drinker along with everyone else.
Yeah.
And of course, by the time I realized I was in trouble, I was too deluded.
There is a small visual detail hidden inside the courtship of Eddie's father that most viewers would walk right past without noticing, and it connects 2 of the most recognizable faces in early 1960s American television. According to Classic Movie Hub, in the scene set inside Norman Jones's radio studio, the walls are decorated with black and white publicity photographs of various celebrities. It is the kind of set dressing that production designers use to make a space feel lived in and authentic, and audiences rarely pay close attention to the specific faces in those photos. But one of them is worth pausing on. Among those photos hanging on the wall is a publicity shot of Dick Van Dyke. At the time the film was made, Dick Van Dyke was starring in The Dick Van Dyke Show, which had premiered in 1961 and was already becoming one of the most popular comedies on American television. His face was enormously recognizable to audiences of the period. What makes the detail clever rather than random is the connection. Norman Jones in the film is played by Jerry Van Dyke, who was Dick's younger brother. Jerry was a comedian and actor in his own right, but he was always working in the considerable shadow cast by his more famous sibling. Having Dick's photo quietly hung on the wall of the set where Jerry was performing is the kind of insider joke that the filmmakers slipped in, knowing that only a fraction of the audience would catch it. It is the sort of detail that rewards a second viewing, and it adds a layer of affection and humor to the production that goes beyond what the script itself provides. Fact 9. Ron Howard and Shirley Jones had already been siblings.
I just wanted to say how sorry I am. You know how close Helen and I were. I guess she was just about my best friend.
By the time The Courtship of Eddie's Father brought Ronnie Howard and Shirley Jones together on screen. In 1963, the 2 actors had actually already shared a movie together, and in that earlier film, they had played family members too, just a very different kind. According to Classic Movie Hub, both Howard and Jones appeared in the 1962 musical The Music Man, where they played brother and sister. The Music Man was a major production based on the smash Broadway show starring Robert Preston and featuring a large ensemble cast. Ronnie Howard played Winthrop Peru, a young boy with a lisp who is transformed by the arrival of the charismatic traveling salesman, Harold Hill. Shirley Jones played Marion the librarian, who is Winthrop's older sister. Their scenes together in that film established a genuine on-screen chemistry and comfort with each other. Just 1 year later, they were brought together again for The Courtship of Eddie's Father, this time with a completely different relationship. Instead of siblings, they were now, in the logic of the film's story, likely to become stepmother and stepson, depending on how things developed between Jones's character and Tom Corbett. It is an interesting creative coincidence that the same 2 actors were cast as family members in back-to-back films, first as siblings and then as a potential parent and child. Whether the producers of The Courtship of Eddie's Father were aware of or even deliberately drawing on the established rapport from The Music Man is not fully documented, but the existing comfort between the 2 performers almost certainly contributed to how naturally their scenes together played on screen. Fact 10. The film they watch in movie was no accident.
Come on now, Eddie, I'm sure you did something.
There was something I wanted to do, but I didn't.
There is a scene in The Courtship of Eddie's Father in which Tom Corbett takes young Eddie to the movies and the film they sit down to watch inside that fictional cinema is Sam Peckinpah's Western Ride the High Country, released in 1962. For most viewers, and this is just a background detail, a glimpse of a movie poster or a few seconds of footage that establishes the setting without drawing much attention to itself. But according to Classic Movie Hub, the choice was not random at all. Ride the High Country was, like The Courtship of Eddie's Father itself, an MGM picture. By featuring another studio title within the film, the production was doing something studios have always done when they get the chance, quietly promoting their own catalog. It costs nothing, it fills the scene with an authentic detail, and it keeps audiences within the MGM universe rather than inadvertently advertising a competitor. What makes this detail interesting beyond the obvious studio politics is the specific film chosen. A Ride the High Country was a critically respected Western directed by a filmmaker who would go on to become one of the most celebrated directors in American cinema. It was not a throwaway choice. Peckinpah's film had received genuine praise from critics and was seen as a thoughtful, mature Western, which gave the moment in The Courtship of Eddie's Father a certain credibility. The scene also works on a simple storytelling level. A widowed father taking his young son to see a Western is an entirely believable outing for the early 1960s, and the specific film fits the period perfectly. The studio promotion was layered inside something that already made complete narrative sense. Fact 11. The radio studio scene is riddled with technical errors.
Where have you been? We haven't seen you around. Oh, I've been taking shotty lessons. That's cool. Did you show us the move? I don't really know that much about it yet.
But one of the recurring pleasures of revisiting older films with fresh eyes is spotting the moments where the production design does not quite match reality. And The Courtship of Eddie's Father offers a particularly clear example in the scenes set inside a radio studio. According to information documented on IMDb, the studio environment depicted in the film contains at least 2 significant technical inaccuracies that anyone familiar with broadcast production would notice immediately. The first involves smoking. Characters are shown smoking inside the radio studio, which would have been strictly prohibited in a real broadcast environment, even in 1963. The reason has nothing to do with health concerns in the modern sense. It is purely technical. Cigarette smoke leaves nicotine deposits on electrical contacts and on the sensitive tape heads that radio equipment depends on to function properly. A single session of smoking in a working studio could cause real damage to expensive and delicate equipment, which is why no legitimate broadcast facility would have allowed it. The second error involves food and drinks being placed on turntable stands. In an actual radio studio, the turntables used to play records were precision instruments that needed to be kept completely clear of any objects that could interfere with their operation or cause vibration. Resting anything on or near a turntable stand during a broadcast would have been considered completely unacceptable behavior by any trained technician. And neither of these mistakes would have been noticed by the average moviegoer in 1963, and they almost certainly still go unnoticed by most audiences today. But for anyone with a background in broadcast radio, both errors are plainly visible, and they are a reminder of how often films sacrifice technical accuracy in favor of what simply looks good on camera. Fact 12. The bowling alley no longer exists.
Eddie, what happened?
I think I forgot to stay alert.
No, come on.
Among the various locations used during the production of The Courtship of Eddie's Father, one stands out for a reason that has nothing to do with anything that happens on screen. The film includes a bowling alley sequence, and according to Wikipedia, that scene was filmed at a real Los Angeles bowling alley called Paradise Bowl, which was located at 9116 South Sepulveda Boulevard, are roughly 2 miles north of Los Angeles International Airport. For anyone interested in the history of Los Angeles locations used in classic Hollywood productions, the detail is a small but meaningful one. Paradise Bowl is gone. The bowling alley no longer exists, which makes the footage in the film one of the few visual records of what the space looked like when it was still operating. This is something that happens often with film locations, particularly in a city like Los Angeles, where commercial real estate changes rapidly and buildings that were landmarks in one decade can be demolished or converted in the next. Bowling alleys were an important part of American social life in the early 1960s. They were places where families spent leisure time together, where dates were had, and where communities gathered in an informal, unrelaxed setting. The decision to use a real bowling alley rather than build one on a studio soundstage gave the scene an authentic texture that a constructed set might not have provided. The fact that Paradise Bowl is now gone means that the film preserves a small piece of Los Angeles history that would otherwise be entirely lost. Anyone watching that sequence today is seeing a building and a space that no longer exists anywhere except on screen. Fact 13. The TV theme song was originally a love song about a woman.
Hey, Uncle Norman, if my dad likes this movie, could we make another one?
Sure, we call it The Son of Tom Corbett Returns.
When the television series version of The Courtship of Eddie's Father premiered in 1969, it came with a theme song that quickly became one of the most recognized pieces of music on American television. The song, called Best Friend, was performed by Harry Nilsson, and its warm and gentle melody perfectly matched the show's tone. Audiences understood it as a song about the bond between a father and his son, two people making their way through life together as best friends. But according to Dangerous Minds, the song did not begin its life that way at all. Best Friend was originally written about a woman. It started as a track called Girlfriend, and it was recorded as part of the sessions for Nilsson's album Aerial Ballet, which was released in 1968. In its original form, the song was a romantic piece addressed to a female partner, someone the singer considered his closest companion and confidant. When the producers of the television series were looking for theme music, the melody and emotional quality of the song caught their attention. The idea of someone being your best friend in the world translated beautifully from a romantic context to the father and son relationship at the center of the show. But the lyrics needed to be adjusted to remove the romantic specifics and make the song work in its new context. Those changes were made, the title was adjusted, and Girlfriend became Best Friend. The reworked song was embraced so completely by audiences that today, most people have no idea it ever existed in another form. The television version is the only version most listeners have ever encountered, and its origin as a love song about a woman has largely faded from public memory. Fact 14. Nilsson scored the whole first season, then quietly disappeared.
Hey, what is that? It's a new song I'm working on.
Hey, can we hear it?
Sure.
Hey, Groovy, we're gonna have a show! Hey!
Harry Nilsson's involvement with the courtship of Eddie's father went significantly deeper than simply recording the opening theme song. According to Wikipedia, for the early episodes of the television series, Nilsson provided not just the main title music, but also the brief musical cues that appeared throughout the episodes themselves. The short pieces of music, sometimes only a few seconds long, that play under scenes to set mood, signal transitions, or punctuate moments of humor or emotion. Nilsson sang all of these cues himself, which gave the first several episodes of the series a remarkably consistent and personal musical identity. His voice was threaded through the entire fabric of those early episodes in a way that most viewers probably never consciously registered, but that contributed significantly to the show's warm, intimate atmosphere. The problem was purely logistical. Nilsson, by 1969, was a rising star in the music world, with serious albums, critical praise, and a growing list of professional commitments competing for his time. Getting him into a recording studio to lay down dozens of brief functional cues, pieces of music that existed entirely to serve the television production rather than stand on their own as songs, proved increasingly difficult to arrange. His schedule simply did not accommodate the demands of a weekly television production, After 9 episodes, the arrangement became unworkable. Nilsson's musical interjections were gradually phased out of the series, replaced by more conventional scoring approaches. The show continued successfully without him. But those first 9 episodes have a slightly different sound from everything that followed, a musical personality that belongs entirely to one artist who quietly stepped away before most of the audience ever knew he had been there. Fact 15. Eddie grew up to front a punk band.
Always?
Always. I tell you what, let's you and I have a sort of a secret pact just between us.
Of all the surprising turns that a career can take, few are as unexpected as the journey traveled by Brandon Cruz, the young actor who played Eddie Corbett in the television series from 1969 to 1972. Cruz was the warm, endearing child at the center of a gentle family show about a father and son navigating life together. He was, in every sense of the phrase, a wholesome child star. What he became in later life was something considerably different. According to documentation from multiple sources, Cruz stepped away from acting for a period and eventually found his way into the punk rock scene. In the early 2000s, he became the lead vocalist for the Dead Kennedys, one of the most politically charged and confrontational punk bands in American music history. The Dead Kennedys had built their reputation in the 1980s with abrasive, satirical music that deliberately challenged mainstream values. Having a former child star from a family-friendly television series step in as their frontman was not a combination anyone could have predicted. Cruz has spoken openly about how his life took him in that direction, and the arc of his story, from wholesome child actor to punk vocalist, has made him one of the more genuinely unusual figures in the history of either television or music. What adds an additional layer to his story is the relationship he maintained with Bill Bixby, the actor who played his television father, Tom Corbett. The two remained genuinely close long after the show ended. According to the Office theme song, Cruz stayed friends with Bixby until Bixby's death from prostate cancer in 1993. In the years before Bixby died, Cruz was a consistent presence in his life, and their bond extended well beyond anything a television production required of either of them.